It's recording. It's recording. It's happening. Here we are. This is Rocco Jerome. This is the first episode of On the Record with Rocco Jerome, and I'm on the record here with Rich Handley.
Hello.
Hey there. What's going on, Hansy?
Oh, just working a lot, which is a good thing, and it's always better than working a little. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's a good attitude to have. You're
like when, I don't like the fact that I turned 50 this year, but I always say that getting old is a whole lot better than not getting old.
Yeah.
So it's kind of how I tend to look at a lot of things, you know?
Yeah.
My day job, there are days when I'm overworked, but that's a whole lot better than being underworked. So that's kind of the stance I try to have in life. And I'm not always successful at it, but it's kind of how I try to look at things.
Well, I think that's a healthy attitude. Are you chagrined about being 50, or do you feel like you've earned it?
You know, there are days when I really feel 50, and and I say, well, it's a shame. I would love to feel 30 again.
Uh-huh.
There are other days when I say, I earned it. I did all of the yard work from 13 to 50, and after 37 years of yard work, it's okay that I'm going to hire someone to do the mowing now.
Hey, man, you're at the...
Yeah, I earned it.
You're at the station of life where you can afford... I assume that you can afford to get somebody to do it, or you can make some kid do it.
Already started,
yeah.
I decided after 37 years, it was always a good reason to go outside. It was always a good reason to get exercise. But the truth is, it's kind of nice to suddenly hear mowers going on outside and know that when I look outside an hour later, it's going to look better than when I used to do it. So.
I think that sounds like a sort of a wonderful position to find yourself in, to be honest.
I never wanted to be in that position, though. I've always been of the mind that I really don't want to pay people to do things I can do.
Yeah.
Paying people to do things I can't do, I'm all for it. You will never catch me doing plumbing because I like my house not to be a swimming pool.
Right, yeah.
But I always felt like paying someone to do something I can do, it irked me. But as soon as you hit 50, people are right. Things start falling apart.
Yeah.
and you go, maybe just, curling up on a couch and telling people to get off my damn lawn, maybe it's not so bad an idea.
Yeah. I turned 40 myself this month, and I am...
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited about it, to be honest. I feel like, when I was 30, I didn't have it together the way that I do now. I feel like I'm able to make things happen in a way now just through my contacts and through whatever sort of sense that I've managed to acquire over these years. That I'm doing better now.
The first time you go to get off the couch and find yourself going, like your grandfather, and then you go, oh my God.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm with you on this. 30 to me, I really didn't know what the hell I was doing. 40 I was okay with. 50 is the first time where I've gone, shit, I'm in my second quarter. I'm in my second quarter century. Listen to me, I can't do math all of a sudden. I'm in my second half century now.
Yeah.
I'm freaking old. It's the first time I've come to that conclusion, but I'm okay with it because, like I said, the alternative is to not get old.
Exactly.
And since I'm not immortal, that would not be a good thing.
No. Yeah, no. I understand. There's no portrait of Rich Handley anywhere, right?
No, but if my name were Dorian, I'd be very, very relieved. But it's not. So
yeah.
I deal with the aging as best I can.
Yeah, Dorian Handley. So, Rich, you are you're a professional writer, right? That's all that you do. Is that right?
Well, by day I'm an editor, but I do a lot of writing as well.
Yeah.
By day I'm the editor of a technology website called RFID Journal, which deals with radio frequency identification technologies, and all of your listening audience just fell asleep. But on the side, I write and edit science fiction books or contribute to them, essays, articles, whatever. I've done some comics work, some role-playing game work, some short fiction. Basically, whatever anybody asks me to write. If Bazooka came to me and say we're rebooting Bazooka Joe, I'd say sure.
Yeah, you gotta find your inner Bazooka Joe fan.
Well, I've always felt Bazooka Joe just didn't have enough gravitas. be the one that gives Bazooka Joe gravitas.
We'll have to look it up and see if anybody has written that yet, or if you can be the one to do that. You know,
I'm going to be the Alan Moore of Bazooka Joe. I'm going to reveal he was never a Bazooka Joe to begin with.
Yeah.
He was a Hubba Bubba Jim, and no one knew this.
Yeah. And he's 50 years old, and he's reflecting on his life, and
he's paying people to do his lawn.
Yeah, he's laying on the couch inside of his house, and he's dreaming of the days when people really respected him, back when he was a Bazooka Joe. What you've hit on there, it's something that I think about a lot as a writer and as a guy who has not yet achieved what you have, but
actually, I think you've done pretty damn well for yourself. I'm always impressed.
Well, thanks, Rich. I appreciate that, and you've been a great help to me too along the way. But when you write for other people, you know, it's you're not singing the song you want to sing. You know what I mean? You're
I do.
Yeah, you're dancing to a beat that might not be your beat, but I think that when you do that, it almost forces you to be. In some ways, I think it makes you a better writer because you're not so attached to the subject. What's your feeling on that?
Well, the one thing a person should never be is his or her own editor.
Right.
People who self-publish without having other people read them, like 5 other people, end up with crap that they've self-published. And the reason for that is tied in with what you just said. Having someone else give you some guidelines, some restrictions, it can be frustrating, but it hones your craft. It helps you recognize where your own flaws are, because we're not always capable of recognizing that we are not nearly as brilliant as we think we are. And you know this. Any writer who's ever written knows this. We'll write something and go, "Damn, I'm brilliant. This is wonderful." And then we go back and read it the next day and just sort of like, face palm and go, oh. And that gets magnified by 12 when you hand it to someone else who isn't as self-impressed with this work as you would be. So while it's frustrating to have someone else call the shots and say, you need to change this, you need to cut this, the truth is, it really helps you define your own skill set, because it helps you take a look at your writing from someone else's viewpoint. And it's humbling. And the one thing I think every writer needs a healthy dose of is humility. I think the best writers are the ones who recognize that there's never a point where you cease to get better, or at least that you should be able to continue to get better.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta keep moving down that road.
I have trouble reading things that I wrote 20, 30 years ago.
Oh, man, I know what you mean.
My professional work was the early 90s, and it was actually my first professional work was for a local Long Island newspaper covering the school boards. That was ridiculous, but
wow.
But it got me a start. It was not the most interesting material, but so there'd never be any reason for me to reread that stuff. Let's just say that. But my first stuff that I actually enjoyed writing, I have trouble, which was for the Star Wars role-playing game from West End Games.
Yeah.
I have trouble rereading it because I was a very green writer. At the time, I thought, I'm really proud of this. This is great. I'm here. And, man, that stuff is raw. And, but, the funny thing is, 10 years later, I would say that about that work and think, finally, I've arrived. I'm a writer now. But that would have been, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So I have trouble reading the stuff from 10 years ago when I thought I'd gotten so much better.
Yeah. I tell you what, when people tell me that they read things, they can go back and read things that they wrote a long time ago, and they think that it still is as great as anything, I honestly, it makes me wonder what they're like as a person, because it's to me, it indicates. Yeah, and it indicates that maybe they're not developing, I mean, It's like, I think that, not to jump around too much here, but I think that, that's one of the most sort of, and it just sort of happened by proxy, kind of by accident. But I think that one of the great things about Doctor Who as a mythology is that that's everybody. You know, you're a different person at different points in your life when you go to look back. Yeah. And I think that's wonderful. It's funny that they needed to find a new actor, and that was the original reason for that. And then the long-term effect is that I think it's sort of a brilliant statement on the development of a human mind. I wanted to go back to West End Games and your work on the Star Wars stuff, which is, to many people, sort of the beginning of the extended universe, which for my fans that are not fans, but listeners, I'm not going to go so far as to say fans. That seems presumptuous. But to anybody listening to this right now, if you're not familiar with this, in the 80s, during the time that Star Wars sort of vanished, there was a role-playing game series which sort of expanded the world of Star Wars and the background characters, and said, hey, this guy that's in the background in the bar, this is the story that he has, and this is the species of alien that he is and what he might be up to. And then if you want to pretend to be one of the guys in that bar with your buddies sitting at a table over a bowl of chips, maybe a Coke or an adult beverage, you can do that, and here's the books that help you do that. And there
were some really great books, and I say that not self-serving because these are not the ones I wrote. I was at the very, very end of West End Games era. But the Galaxy Guides, for example, that they came out with were wonderful, and they formed the basis of the expanded universe. A lot of the comic and novel writers started referencing the planets and so forth, the species names that all came from that.
Yeah, and
I came in at the end of that. I was writing for West End's Star Wars Adventure Journal, and then it sort of went from there. After West End lost the license due to, and I hope I'm not setting myself up here for people getting angry at me, but due to really serious mismanagement on the part of the company that owned West End Games. In a nutshell, they went out of business because they were mismanaging shoe sales. It's a long story. But and then they didn't pay half the people who'd written for them, me included. And, but Wizards, I think was it Wizards? That was the next. Yeah, I think Wizards of the Coast was the next one, right? There were a few of them along the line.
I think so. It's so funny to think of that now because it's Star Wars. You know, like that these weird little companies even had a shot. You know, even had any skin in the game at all. You know.
Well, you know, it's funny. West End Games was a small company that was owned by an Italian shoe importer, and the fact that they're the ones that got the role-playing game is pretty phenomenal when you consider what Star Wars is today.
Right.
I mean, it's massive. These days, not that they weren't competent, because the amazing thing is they did really good work. I mean, they had amazing staff of writers and editors, and the illustrators were wonderful. These books were so much fun to read. And but you're right. Today, a company owned by an Italian shoe importer, where the role-playing game was almost a second thought to the people who actually own the company, I don't know that they would have gotten it today, and it's a shame because they did a good job.
Yeah.
But after Wizards of the Coast, which I think was the next one, but after they came along, I also did some work for that one. So I was in the early days of the expanded universe, and I came in around the same time as Jason Fry and Abel Pena and Pablo Hidalgo and the other people around that. We all knew each other before we were writing for them, and we were kind of like the guys who were known as fixing. You know, we were kind of like the Mario and Luigi of Star Wars. Wherever there were holes, we were coming along and plugging them in our plumber outfits.
Yeah.
You know, so like if Star Wars was pretty cohesive, but you know, you'd have things like the planet Biss would be destroyed, and then a later book would have the planet Biss in it. Well, you had to have somebody explain this. And, you know, one of those weirdos would write something that would explain this.
Right. Somebody's got to apply for the No Prize.
Right. So they said Mario, Luigi, and I said coming.
Yeah. Man, that's so. It really is. I mean, I love that period of time because I feel like during that time, Star Wars belonged to people who really cared about it.
Absolutely. There were some amazingly knowledgeable and passionate people writing Star Wars, and there still are today. I don't mean to imply that they're not, but in that era of the EU, a lot of the people who were contributing to it were fans first,
right?
And which isn't always a good thing, I might add. I should clarify this. I know a lot of fans say it should always be fanboys writing, but the truth is, you really want writers writing who just happen
Yeah.
Because fanboys writing will end up giving you things like 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah. Well, and they get caught up.
I'm sorry?
I think they get caught up in the minutia of things a lot of times.
Yes, that can happen. And that's the reason fan fiction sometimes gets a bad reputation.
Right.
Because, and there's some remarkable fan fiction out there, but a lot of it is written by amateurs, and we're all amateurs at some point. I mean, I repeat, I don't read my old stuff. But the thing that was great about that era of the EU is that a lot of it was being the novels and the comics. A lot of them were being written by people who were professional writers, but really gave a damn about Star Wars, and it was a cool time. They would make a point of trying to reference each other's work, and whenever they could back then, because it was different. The Marvel series tended to be pushed or relegated to the it sort of happened in the past thing, but we don't talk about it now. But the truth is, there were still a lot of writers who gave a damn about that and were working it in.
Yeah.
And so it was a fun time to be reading the EU. It was certainly a fun time to be writing it.
Yeah. Quick plug. You, of course, along with Joseph Baronato, edited those Star Wars books for Sequart, and I wrote an article in the third one about that sort of fallow period when people weren't really paying attention. Those
that
dark.
was a fun essay, by the way.
Thank you. I really enjoyed doing that.
If I didn't tell you in the past, I think I did, but if I didn't, I'll tell you again.
You did, and I appreciate it. I always like to hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Had a lot of fun doing that.
It was right up your alley too. Given how you get with nostalgia, you were the right person for that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and also I think that it's just that idea that who does it belong to? Does it belong to anyone? Does it belong to a corporation? Does it belong to fans? Does it belong to fans who have been fans for longer? How much of it is just because of how old you might be or how young you might be? And I always think that that's an interesting subject to explore when it comes to.
I think the answer to that
things.
question is yes.
Yeah.
Because it belongs to the corporation, it belongs to the new fans, it belongs to the old fans. And
yeah, sure.
That's where all the debating and the arguing comes from.
Right.
Because in different ways, it belongs to each of those groups and more.
Right.
And that's what makes it so much fun, but it also is the cause of a lot of headbutting.
Right. Well, it's just a matter of how seriously one takes it, I think, too. And I think
Here's
that...
the thing. I've always felt that that continuity matters, canon matters, up until the point that they don't.
Right. Yeah.
In that, I'm all for plugging the holes. Everything that I wrote with Star Wars ended up having references to other people's works, and it's a thrill. But I also think that good storytelling has to come first.
Yeah, that's absolutely sacrosanct.
Which is why these holes exist in the first place,
Right.
And if someone else can come along and plug that hole, then hey, what you wrote gets even better because it no longer is discontinuous.
Yeah.
So I think that I hate to say the phrase canon schmanon because it's not like I believe in throwing out canon.
Right.
That's already been done.
Yeah.
That didn't go over well with fans. But I do think that good storytelling comes first, which is why once I started enjoying the Clone Wars cartoon, I was able to overlook the fact that it routinely shot holes in the expanded universe, which bothered me a lot at first.
Right, yeah.
At one point, I just sort of threw my hands up and went,
Okay.
I'm going to look at this as something it's turned Star Wars into a block of Swiss cheese, but you know what? It's still tasty.
Yeah, I think that's the right attitude to have. So moving from that into something that belongs to maybe a smaller group of us by virtue of the fact that it has a smaller fan base, but you've also done a lot with the Planet of the Apes mythos.
Yeah, that goes back to the mid-2000s, and it's funny because my becoming someone who's done a lot of apes work was totally accidental. I had lost my job it was, years ago, and was looking for something to fill my time. And so I started rereading everything, all the old Planet of the Apes comics, and rewatching the movies and shows. And I had put together just for when I wasn't looking for a job, I just created this simplistic timeline of events that incorporated all the comics up until that point. And because anytime you see a timeline of Planet of the Apes, it's always just the movies. So I said, well, can I work the TV show in? Can I work the comics? It's not it's not a perfect fit. There are many flaws in trying to make that work because they contradict each other. But it was fun, and I turned it into a website. And Ed Gross, anyone who is around my age, so somewhere between your age and my age, should know the name because the guy used to write 1,000 books every year. He was looking to launch an independent publisher. I forget what was he going to call it? Timeline Books, I think it was going to be. And he saw the website online and asked if I'd turn it into a book. And I did, and then unfortunately, and I do not in any way fault Ed with this, we're still good friends, but Ed wasn't able to launch Timeline Books. and then so instead, I completed it anyway, and then it was eventually published as a book called Timeline of the Planet of the Apes. And I had so much fun with that I wrote a sequel, Lexicon of the Planet of the Apes, and then because of those, a couple years later, Titan Books allowed me and Jim Beard to edit a short fiction anthology called Tales from the Forbidden Zone, and that was just so much fun to do. Yeah. And because of that, I ended up writing material for Boom Studios, the comic book publisher.
Yeah, great
materials for their Planet of the Apes archive reprint series. I've actually got more work upcoming for them, but I can't talk about it yet.
Hey, that's cool, man. I understand.
Yeah.
I would just like to observe that it was a ballsy move for you to just keep writing it, even after there was no longer any evidence that you would be able to certainly get it published.
Thanks. So, what happened with that was it was disheartening, but my reason for doing it was this. I had become friends with, I'd gotten another job in the years since I had written this website. And I was the managing editor of an online, it wasn't even online, managing editor of a print magazine called Advanced Imaging, and I became best friends with the art director, Paul Giacchetti, who's sadly passed away a year ago. And Paul and I were really the most well-oiled machine. We saw everything the same way. And we worked closely together, so it made it really easy to work together. And then one day we just said, we both between us have a good deal of experience in publishing. Let's launch our own publishing imprint. And it's kind of like saying let's go to Hollywood and be a movie star. Like,
yeah.
This isn't But then in the midst of all this, the thing with the timeline, with the Apes book happened, and we said, you know what? We can do this. I know how to edit. You know how to do graphic arts work and art direction. Let's make the timeline book the first publication, and then we'll hire some other authors. And that's kind of how it started. So, ironically, Ed not being able to do timeline books not only got me to finish that book, but also launched Hassline Books, which was the name of the company.
Wow.
We had a lot more. We published a number of books from different authors, and then sadly, when Paul died, a number of the books that were being planned, I had to cancel simply because I didn't have it in me to continue Hassline without him. But yeah, so I think part of it was, I just wanted to finish that book. I had written so much of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I got like 30 pages left of a 330-page book. I'm just going to do this. And then if it ever gets published, you know what? I'll just make it the most amazing damn website anyone's ever seen. But yeah, so like it started me on a pretty fun period of my career. So, and then because of that, I actually got back into Star Wars again because I had written a lot of stuff for the Star Wars universe over the years, for Dark Horse Comics and for Tops and for the StarWars.com and I've lost track. But various The Insider. I was a columnist for them.
Yeah.
And then I kind of just sort of stopped writing for them for years. But because I had done the Apes books, I ended up recently doing a trilogy of writing some materials for a recent trilogy of books from IDW, reprinting the Archie Goodwin and
Al Williamson.
Al Williamson.
Oh my God, that's to me
are the pinnacle of Star Wars.
I think that's the height of the medium. To be honest, I don't know that there's It's always funny to me because I'm not interested in what Disney is doing with Star Wars. I'm just not into it. And
yeah, I get that.
When people give me a hard time about that, they're like, "Won't you just see it? Why don't you just go see it?" I'll always say, "Why don't you read these comics? Why don't you read these Archie Goodwin, Al Williamson comics? Why don't you read these?"
Well, I'll tell you this. I've had mixed reactions myself to the Disney films. I've liked them to different degrees. The one that to me really stands out is Solo.
Yeah.
Because Solo feels like it's a Brian Daley novel.
Yeah.
And as someone who has a passion for the Brian Daley Han Solo novels and L. Neil Smith's Lando Calrissian novels and the Goodwin Williamson strips and the Marvel comic series, I like the old school stuff. For me, Solo was the first thing in the Disney era that truly felt like it belonged back in the 70s and 80s. It was great.
I might need to see that because you're the second person in 2 weeks that's given me that sort of endorsement of it.
Yeah, I really felt like I was watching a Daley novel. And I sat there grinning the whole time, and I know a lot of people who felt the same way.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll make time for that one. To be honest with you, I don't really take in a lot of genre entertainment anymore, to be honest. There's not a lot of like science fiction shows that I follow anymore or anything. It's just sort of, I see the Marvel movies when they come out, and that's about it as far as my viewing habits. For the most part, it's unless you talk about like crime or espionage stories or even sort of spy-fi. But outside of that, it's rare that I even have the inclination anymore to go see a lot of that stuff. And I think that the reason for that too, or at least part of it, is that I write in those fields, and it's kind of almost ruined me for it, which I don't think is the case for you.
Well, it's funny you say that. As I mentioned, that there was a long period where I wasn't submitting anything to Lucasfilm, and that's kind of the reason. Actually, I had gotten burnt out on the very things I loved for a long time. I think it's bound to happen when you immerse yourself in something. There comes a point where your avocation becomes your vocation, and it's difficult sometimes to maintain enthusiasm. I mean, think back when you're in high school and you chose to read a novel. Meanwhile, at school, you were being told to read The Good Earth.
Right, yeah.
They're both the same thing. It's a reading experience. You're reading a novel.
Right.
But you have to read The Good Earth.
Yeah, there's a test later.
This book.
Yeah.
But you have to read The Good Earth.
Yeah, you're going to have to produce something.
Yeah, and you're going to, exactly. Like it's almost like on some level, being told to read it makes it not good. Right. Now it's not rational, because if you then we're told to read something else and you chose to pick up The Good Earth, you might like it. Chances are you wouldn't. Because quite frankly, I hated The Good Earth. so that's a bad choice for this. But look, I'll give you a better example. I happen to love the novel Catcher in the Rye.
Right.
And I had to read it in school, and years later I picked it up again and read it again on my own, because I wanted to just read it for the sake of reading it, not because I had to take notes and answer questions and do a quiz. And so I think that that's what the difference is. If you immerse yourself in writing about a certain genre or a certain franchise, there comes a point where you just get sick of it.
Yeah, you reach that point of saturation.
With several things. It hasn't happened with Abe's, interestingly. If they came out with 17 TV shows, I would start watching all 17 of them. But it definitely happened with me with Star Wars for a long time, and it's happened with me with other things. Franchise fatigue, I am a person who watched Star Trek going back to when it was original, although I was 2 years old, and it was in a crib because my mom was watching it. But I can truthfully say I watched it when it was original.
There's a lot to be said for seeing things that early on.
Yeah, what? I'm sorry?
There's something to be said for seeing things that early on in your life.
Yeah,
I mean, that was Star Wars for me. It was ever present. There was never not Star Wars around.
Yeah, exactly. It was ever present. When I grew up, Star Trek was something that I watched from when I was basically born.
Right.
And my mom also watched The Outer Limits, and she watched The Twilight Zone, and so these three shows, and then Planet of the Apes films, she loved them. So she instilled in me a love for this stuff, and so it's always been there.
Yeah.
And part of it was that I just loved the stories, but part of it also was it was something my mom and I shared when I was a kid.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for when these things they become a part of your DNA, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's about.
If I recall correctly, were you? I don't remember if you and I spoke, but I seem to recall that you knew what the 4:30 movie was.
No, I don't. I don't think I had that.
When I was a kid growing up in upstate New York, I used to watch every day this daily film showcase called the 4:30 movie.
Yeah.
You could probably figure out what time it aired. Hint: it wasn't 5:45.
Yeah, right.
But it aired every day on our local Channel 7 affiliate, and what they did was they did a very badly edited movie.
Yeah.
In the 70s, editing was just hilarious.
Sure.
TV.
Oh, yeah.
Entire, really important scenes would be cut out so they could put a Budweiser.
Right. Like every 15, 20 minutes on the dot. Doesn't matter what's
exactly.
going on in the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they would do film showcases. So, they'd do, it was always theme weeks. So they'd have, a Monster Movie Week or Godzilla Week. They did Planet of the Apes Week, which is how I grew up watching them.
Yeah. I assume this was on the UHF.
Too, and I don't know why, but they had Gidget Week.
This had to have been. This sounds like UHF station stuff all the way. I assume. Yeah, that was like a third parent for me growing up.
The local ABC affiliate.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up watching this. Funny thing about I watched it for years, and then it was canceled because it was replaced with the People's Court. So I've always hated Judge Wapner.
Yeah. That lousy Judge Wapner. Yeah, UHF stations, man. That was a third parent for me growing up, and it's you can always spot somebody else who has that level of enthusiasm for it, and you're definitely one of those people. It
gets in your blood after a while.
Yeah, it's just there. It's just inside of your brain. That's about all we've got time for. I know that just feels like we just got started. I might have to have you on again if you're ever.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always happy to.
Absolutely.
This was fun.
Yeah. It's
yeah.
Cool.
I hope I wish you a lot of luck with the podcasts. I will definitely be listening to them. And
Yeah.
I would be happy to come back anytime you want me to.
Thanks, man. Promote it. You got anything? You got anything to plug?
To plug, let's see. Well, the latest thing that's coming out, hopefully next month, but if not, then December. Is Somewhere Beyond the Heavens, Exploring Battlestar Galactica.
Nice.
Which I co-edited with Lou Tambone. That's coming out from Sequart.
Let's give a shout out to Lou. Hey, Lou.
Yep. Hey, Lou.
Thanks for listening all the way through.
You mentioned before the Planet of the Apes books. This is part of a series of books that Joe Bernardo and I just
Hey, Joe. Give a shout out to Joe.
I don't know why I said Bernardo.
Bernardo.
Joe and I had done a couple of books about Planet of the Apes and Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then that sort of grew from there, and now other authors are doing it too, which is kind of cool.
Great.
Lou did a Blade Runner book with Joe Bongiorno. Actually, it started with Joe doing the Star Trek book.
Yeah.
And then it went from there to me and Joe doing Planet of the Apes and Star Wars. Now there's a writer doing a Back to the Future book, and I'm contributing to that. There's someone else doing a book on Indiana Jones, and I'm contributing to that.
Yeah, me too. Same here, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I've been writing comedic essays for ATB Publishing for their Outside In series, which are books that sort of take a poking fun look at various franchises. So I've written for their books on Star Trek, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, and then I'll be doing another series soon that they haven't announced. Oh, geez, I'll be doing some more work for Boom for the Apes license. I think that's it at the moment. Yeah, that's it at the moment. I'm always looking for more work, but that's what I've got lined up at the moment.
That's a good rundown.
I missed the big one. November, DC Comics is putting out a book called Hellblazer 30th Anniversary Celebration. And the reason I say the big one is that this also involves the musician Sting from
Nice.
the Police.
Who is, of course, John Constantine.
Exactly. Or Constantine, as anyone who reads the comics knows.
Oh, did I?
Despite how the show pronounces it in the comic, whenever somebody back in the day, whenever someone would say Constantine, John himself would correct him with a line like "Tine rhymes with wine," that sort of thing.
Oh, wow.
But the
I never knew that.
Reeves movie said Constantine, and that's how it's been ever since.
Jeez, man. Talk about not paying attention to the source material. We may as well call it Superman, you know?
You know what? Everything just blanked out for a second, so I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I said they may as well just call it Superman. You know, if you're not paying that much attention to the source material, that you can't get the character's name right in the movie.
That's great.
Jeez, Keanu.
That's really funny.
Yeah,
And
come on.
Man.
Yeah. Good Lord.
Well, you know, I think what it came down to is that movie Americanized them, and I guess Constantine is an Americanization.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess that's the way.
Because Matt Ryan's wonderful in the role on the show. So when he came in, I thought, please have him say Constantine, but he didn't.
Yeah.
But in any case, so that book is from DC Comics. It'll be out in November. It's a collection of 10 of the pivotal John Constantine stories from over the years, and then I wrote about 40 pages of supplementary material for that book. And then Sting wrote the introduction, which is, I mean, well, you know,
that's
wow.
Awesome. That's pretty cool.
The character was drawn to look like him in the first place.
Yeah.
So
that's fantastic. All right, man. Well, cool. Nice to be 1 degree of separation from Sting.
You know what's funny? Every time I tell someone about this, the question is always the same. Did you meet Sting? No. Are you going to meet Sting? No.
No. Yeah, he's not going to fly you in.
Would you like to meet Sting? Sure. Are you going to meet Sting? No.
Yeah,
that's not likely to happen. I doubt Sting even knows who I am, and that's probably going to stay that way too. But that's okay, because I can genuinely say I am in a book that Sting is in, and frankly, that's enough.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, Rich. Good to talk to you, man. I hope
go enjoy your dinner.
Will do. I think we did this right, and we'll find out just about now. About now.